This is not a political piece. I want to say that right off the bat, as anyone is tuning in. This is not about who you want to vote for or anything like that. We're going to talk about the profile of the individual that made an attempt on the life of Donald Trump, Thomas Matthew Crooks, just the other weekend. And we're also going to go into the details of how might have this happened. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent, chief of the counterintelligence behavioral analysis program, with us to talk about all of this. When this happened, actually, you were one of the first people that came to my mind. I had questions, and I think you might have some answers. Was that Radio Shack, or was that, forget what that was.
Now we're dating
Now
ourselves.
we
Radio
are,
Shack.
yes, very much so. But obviously, I mean, this was quite an incident in history. We have not seen an attack like this on an American president since, was it 1981 with Reagan? So I think it's a moment, and it's kind of rare for us to say it's been that long since something horrible has happened in this country, but it has. You have probably more than half the population that was not around when that took place, including myself. But so this was quite a moment. I want to talk about who this person was, and I almost was going to say kid, because we're talking about a 20-year-old here, and for
That's
really
good.
all intents and purposes, brain's still quite developing at that point in time. Let me get your reactions initially to what was going through your mind when this took place.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was talking to someone, and they said, when you were watching this, what first went through your mind? And I apologize, I'm fighting a cold right now.
Sure.
The thing that struck me right away, believe it or not, was I immediately knew what it was because it sounded like gunshots to me, and I did see the miss, well, the near miss where it got his ear. My first thought was, oh my God, who did the round hit?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can hear the blood curdling screams in the background from the hero that lost his life protecting his family, and the others that got hit. So that was my first
Instinct.
impression of
Yeah.
this entire
Yeah.
thing. And then as it developed and they took out the shooter, and you're looking at the shooter, we very rapidly just focusing on the profile of the shooter, which everyone's trying to come up with this motive. Everyone keeps trying to, and we all do this, trying to fit someone into a box we want them to fit in. You
Mhm.
know, the Trump supporters want to try to fit this person or anyone that's anti-Trump into a certain box, and so
Sure.
you're going to look for political rants, manifestos, and all these other things to fit him into a box. Look, and they can point the finger to the other side. He was one of these extremists.
Mhm.
It's all your fault. And likely the other side's doing the same thing.
Sure.
But when you have a lack of data that supports that, in other words, first of all, like you said, he's 20 years old. He did not have any life reps
Mhm.
of time to create a manifesto. Every single person I've interviewed in his life said he never really espoused any political affiliation. Okay, his parents are like registered Republican, but then libertarians. I mean, but pretty average when it came to politics. No
Mhm.
rants, no anything like this. And so then, since we don't have a lot of data points on assassins, so you can't really profile. Profiles are created when you have data. You
Mhm.
assess that data and you create an ideal resume for someone who can do this. And so you don't have really data points for assassins. What you have data points for murderers,
Yeah.
because really that's what he was trying to do. And when you
Mhm.
look at the big four, again, I'm refreshing my memory on this because we do these things all the time. I look at the big four things that inspire murderers to take action. You have love, lust, loathing, and loot. And
Mhm.
out of those big four things that are motivation for murder, what might fit this individual to inspire him to take a pot shot and try to take out the president of the United States or someone of notoriety? And
Mhm.
that was loathing. Not loathing necessarily to the individual because we don't have any data points that he was loathing Trump.
Mhm.
What was he loathing? Well, we have lots of data points. Everyone around him saying he was bullied,
Mhm.
bullied, bullied, bullied. And so when you have someone who's been bullied, a victim mindset, I have seen reports that he had clinically been diagnosed with depression potentially. And when you have all these things together, that with that victim mentality, and you have access to firearms, no good things are going to happen.
Mhm.
So with that, with these limited data points we have, when we're looking for a reason for someone to do something, I went to the only other data point we have is look at Hinckley,
Mhm.
trying to take out Reagan. Him shooting Reagan was not about being anti-Reagan. It was trying to impress in his deranged mind Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
by taking out someone of notoriety by impressing her. So I go to the area of my conjecture that you're dealing with a 20-year-old without the prefrontal lobe being fully formed, and he's acting on semi impulse. There was some planning here, but again, this event was not anything that was planned years in advance.
Sure, sure.
We're talking weeks. And from what I understand, he did searches for both the RNC and the DNC. So he was just trying to do something
Hmm.
of notoriety. And then he posts something, I think, the day before saying, "Hey, big things happening on the 13th." He
Hmm.
posted that on, it wasn't Discord, it was one of the
Steam,
other
I
gaming
believe.
platforms,
Yeah,
on Steam.
yeah.
So all these things give me the hypothesis and conjecture that this was person that was just going for notoriety to prove to the people he loathed that I'm more than you say I am. Look at me, look what I can do. And so when it comes to motives behind this, that, and then when you then throw on top of it, is then I thought of suicide by cop. Maybe it was someone did this because someone did say he was clinically depressed. But then when you actually have him telling his boss, "I'll be back in work the next day,"
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, and the other thing too is the rudimentary explosive in the trunk with as a potential distraction, so he get it off the roof. So all these things lead me to say it most likely was not suicide by cop he was seeking. It wasn't motivated by any political rant. So what are you left with? Loathing towards those other people. So he's trying to prove himself through notoriety. So that's my
So
conjecture.
not even so much about. I mean, if Joe Biden had been going through town,
Hmm.
he may have tried to make an attempt there. It was just more so. If I'm trying to understand this correctly, doesn't matter the figure. Who's the highest profile person that's going to be coming through town anytime soon? How can I get my attention? And I'm going to go after that person just to get the attention.
I think so. I mean, I know it's a leap, but from again, we don't know what the investigators know, but from what's been coming out
Sure.
in the media, and I could apologize because my dry throat.
Yeah. No, you're all good.
Um, we just know what we know from what we see in the media from that leakage. I would say he was going to go for any person of notoriety he could.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that he's saying he's going to come back into work the next day. I mean, this is someone. I mean, it makes you wonder: was he just telling his boss that, or was he thinking, "Oh, I'm just going to go take out the former president, and no one's going to be wiser. I'm just going to sneak out of there." And I mean, that just shows. I mean, there's something wrong there if that's what's
Yeah,
running through your mind. That this is just going to be take the shot, get off the roof, and then go have a Big Mac and go home.
yeah,
It's obviously not in any way any sort of balanced, healthy thinking by any stretch of the imagination. The big question, of course, then that comes into mind beyond who is this person, and obviously it doesn't really play to the narrative that I think either side really wants to go. Look at this. Look at
right.
it's like sorry, you got an oddball. Is how did this oddball? Just I mean, obviously there was some planning here with the explosives that we saw about in the vehicle, but how does one just within the course of a few weeks and then literally goes and buys the ammo, I believe like the day before the next day or the day of, and then climbs up on a roof with a direct shot. I mean, these are things where I think us and the general public just think no way this could ever happen. All these things are going to be so locked down, and there's no way that this is even going to be a possibility. Clearly it wasn't, and he was able to just get right up there with people even noticing, and there was attempts there, or not attempts, but there were openings, there were windows where he could have been stopped. Let's talk about that.
I think we had a confluence of a lot of things happening. First, I think we have a leadership failure on the part of Secret Service, and not from the granular level, because I'm going to do a compare and contrast the different elements of the perimeters that you saw. And then
Hmm.
again, I only am analyzing what I see in the media, and
Sure.
this is all always my conjecture because I'm definitely not disparaging absolutely anyone.
No.
I think this is a result of a societal problem, actually,
Hmm.
as I'll talk about here in a sec.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been so fascinating to look at this and try to put the pieces together.
Yeah, so I think first leadership side on Secret Service. So the Secret Service director, she came out and when asked, "Are you going to change any plans for the RNC?" She goes, "No, our plan is solid," and I believe that. I
Mhm.
believe the plan for this was solid because they've done this. They got a lot of reps in planning. And what I think the leadership failure was is once a leader puts a plan in place, there's a thing called follow up.
Hmm.
Do you follow up with all the moving parts to see if they understand, completely understand, and have rehearsed their roles, and I think there's the key right there. What you saw happen when the former president was shot was you saw an immediate response by the inner perimeter, his personal protection detail jumping on him.
Mhm.
Those are individuals that have a lot of reps. You can tell it. Their tempo was high. They took immediate action. There was no pause.
Mhm.
Those are individuals that are highly trained, a lot of reps, a lot of rehearsals to do just that event. Even Trump himself ducking down behind the barrier. I mean, you could tell these people that tempo was automatic. It was fluid. There wasn't any issues. And I know people are busting on, one of the female agents having a hard time getting her gun away and stuff. That what that's called? It's called emotional flooding. You lose dexterity when you are in fight or flight. You lose a lot of dexterity in what you're doing. So all that was her
Sure.
just in fight or flight. So I'm not even focusing on that.
Mhm.
So you saw that tempo on the inner circle. Now the shooter be on the outer perimeter where it wasn't Secret Service, it was local law enforcement that had that outer perimeter. So the plan for them probably was solid, like they said, but I think you have a few things in place here. One, with defund the police kind of mentalities, I don't know the staffing levels and whether they have the proper staffing levels. I don't know the training level of those people. And also, my friends that was on one of the other shows with me the other day, a retired Secret Service guy, and I've worked with Secret Service when I was in New York, and I'll talk about that in a
Mhm.
second, how these things generally work. So he said they generally have about a 10 or 15-day lead time where they're going to send out their advance team and do the ground reconnoiter and all that. And so that's around the time period they're going to notify the local law enforcement, hey, we're going to need this many personnel to do the outer perimeter. Go. So the local chief, local jurisdiction will take care of, hey, you're all going to be on this outer perimeter. You're going to be doing a protective detail. Go. Now, when you're dealing with defund police, you're dealing with the younger generation, not a lot of training because there's not a lot of money for training. And then how many reps and rehearsals did they actually do, mandated do, and followed up doing from the team leader on exactly what to look for and what to do if they heard it? Because
Mhm.
we've seen this on all the videos. You saw the inner circle, fluid, 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 good comms, fluid, fluid, fluid. Outer perimeter, chaos.
Mhm.
Chaos happens when there's no reps.
Mhm.
Chaos happens when there's no rehearsals. So that outer perimeter was in chaos because they didn't have the reps, they didn't have the training, they didn't have the rehearsals they needed to know how to respond to chaos. Because
Yeah.
when the first round goes down range anywhere, fog of war kicks in, you have to go to muscle memory and chaos ensues. And so you have to be able to work through that. And we didn't see that working efficiently at all because I think all these trickle down effects, you didn't have good follow up from Secret Service saying, checking on them that you know what exactly you're doing. And then the final piece of this, I think this 20-year-old kid did the most obvious thing in the world. He operated in plain sight.
Mhm.
That building he shot from was a staging area for the law enforcement. I heard that they couldn't cover the building adequately, so they'll just stage the cops inside. There was cops inside that building when he was crawling on top. And so what happens is when you hide in plain, your brain can't wrap around the fact. This is the first time again when you have no reps. So if you say we do a thought experiment as I like to do, say you have a bunch of cops that are doing the outer perimeter that normally they're patrol cops
Mhm.
and they pull people over in cars, they give out speeding tickets. Do they know exactly what to look for, what to see, and are they empowered to make the calls they need to make to mitigate a threat? And they did have the one cop go up on the roof. He saw somebody, got back down because the guy aimed the gun at him. And 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 why was that? Was it a fear of threat of life or fear because he really didn't know what to do?
Mhm.
Am I authorized to shoot? Am I authorized not to shoot? What am I supposed to do? When I don't know what to do, I'm going to duck.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? That's because there's no reps, there's no rehearsal. So I think that was the major gap here. So it's not necessarily I think the plan was off because I think Secret Service puts together fantastic plans. They've been doing it a very long time. I think the execution of the plan is what's starting to fail all over because of all these challenges with law enforcement, defund police, low recruitment rates, low funding for training. All these things I think is a factor.
It's almost like in the past, this plan would have worked because there would have been more qualified
Yes.
individuals in those positions. Today, that's just not the case. You can't keep relying on that. I mean, if you're going to make an analogy kind of outside of this, situation, it's going like, oh, I'm expecting a 5-course meal, but all I we're hiring the guy who was flipping the burgers at McDonald's, and then being shocked when you're not getting the gourmet dinner out of it. These are facts though that are already known, that people, I mean, certainly I would think the Secret Service would be aware that, hey, the quality of what we're getting out here, I mean, I'm sure all those officers had the best of intent. I do not think there's anything that was anyone was wanting this to happen or try to happen or let it happen.
Right.
But you only know what you know, and you only have the training that you have. um they knew that this was an issue over out in this area, that's a very big point of weakness. Why still rely on people that are not nearly qualified to do those jobs when they're not qualified to do them, especially when we're talking about the security of a former president? Take politics out of it. I don't care if you love the guy, hate the guy, whatever. It's a former president. You can't have
Mhm.
somebody being able to shoot at him. Is this something where they need to take a look at these vulnerabilities a little more closely and go, or a lot more closely, and go, look, yeah, in the past this did work and now it doesn't. So we got to get our guys out here, especially for something like that. A lot of times, I mean, at least in modern day, you're not going to get very close to the president with a weapon. You can be pretty far away and maybe get to the president with a weapon, which I would think that'd be almost another a bigger vulnerability almost in situations like this on a rooftop than just right next to him. He's got his pretty tight circle there. Out there, it's very weak. Why are we putting the weakest of individuals to patrol those areas when it is the weakest of spots?
I don't think they had anything else to work with. I think you work with what you got. And I also think, again, I go to the psychological side of this, which
Hmm.
always is full of conjecture on my part. But
Sure.
I think because his crowds tend to be so extremely pro Trump that you get lulled into thinking, who would possibly come here to shoot Trump? This is nothing but Trump country. See what I mean?
Yes,
So
and
it
yeah.
kind of lets your guard down.
Uh huh.
Because I mean, think about this: Trump is pro Second Amendment, and when you're in a place that has in Pennsylvania, in a rural area that people generally have a lot of guns, you see someone walk around a gun, you see Second Amendment kind of Trump guy, and you're like, it's just guy with a gun, of course.
And that was kind of the attitude around there. I mean,
Hmm.
that was, I mean, and honestly, statistically, if you were to look at this, it's not the crowd that you'd think that this would be happening at. I would suspect it be more danger the other way around. One group certainly has far more arms than the other. Not a political statement, just a fact.
Right.
So yeah, so I guess I understand what you're saying, where it's you do kind of let your guard down. We're all human, so we just tend to think that, well, it's less likely that that's going to happen. But the fact that they even had people at a certain perimeter with a weapon, and people, that's the other part of this that shocks me, is this: you had people out there before the shots were fired going, there's a gunman on the roof, and it took as long as it did for something to happen to stop him. That to me is shocking. It's not just something, it's not a small event here that we're talking about. We're talking again about the former president, and nobody seems to know what the hell to do. And you had the officer that did retreat too, which that's going to be with him for the rest of his life. But again, you see the gunman, and he doesn't know what to do with a gunman on the roof that's not a sniper for the police or for the Secret Service. How did this happen?
So I really think this. I interviewed someone for my podcast a couple years ago now, and his last name is Bowman, and he actually does an analysis of these kind of threats all over the world. Matter of fact, he covered the Ariana Grande concert
Mm,
in the UK, where someone saw something, even a cop saw something, and and he was afraid to what to do, and the place blew up and people died, even though he saw something.
mhm.
Because and why? The trickle down of empowerment and decision making wasn't at his level. He said, "I have to check with the supervisor. I got to
Mm.
check with the supervisor. I got to check with the supervisor." And so I think that's what the follow up from Secret Service, who's lead on this, really needs to do a better job for that, for all the people that are it's important to remember, I think, when you're doing something this critical, everyone's a tip of the spear. Every
Yeah.
single law enforcement out there is a tip of the spear. A lot of times people think there's one tip of the spear, it's a protection detail right around the president or the
Mhm.
former president. Everyone else is just a shaft of the spear supporting that. And a lot of times with cops at if you're not the lieutenant or the sergeant, you never feel like you're in decision making, mode. you always have to check. You always have to call in. And so it's very hard to, I think, again, pure conjecture from the individuals here, but it's hard psychologically getting out of the mindset, I got to check with someone before I take this kind of action. Because when you deal with life or death situations, and I mean, think about it. So let's play this one forward. Here's a cop crawling up on the roof. He sees a guy with a gun, and he shoots him before this guy takes a shot. What's going through that cop's mind? Given everything that's happened in society these days, what's going through that cop's mind? He sees a 20-year-old young kid on the roof with a rifle, and he's about to kill him before he takes any action.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think's actually going through that cop's mind?
Is this, should I do this? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to, I mean,
Is
that
this real? Is this
is
not
this,
real? What am
yeah,
I supposed to see what
yeah.
I mean? It's that pause because he doesn't actually have a rep in doing that. He has been told if you see something like this, you are completely authorized without any repercussions about you and your family to shoot and kill.
Mm-hmm.
I seriously doubt that conversation ever happened.
And that's I think the key thing here. People aren't empowered where they need to be in situations like this, and then that's where the pause comes in. Another thing that ran through
It
my
is.
mind that day was Uvalde, where we had
Yes.
literally about 300
Yes.
officers standing outside of school with one kid inside with a high powered rifle, and everyone's just like, we don't know what to do. We're waiting for the orders. That was mind boggling. But it's very similar, it seems, to what happened here. Those were a bunch of innocent little children. And here's a former president, and we still have the same sort of issues.
The only thing that overcomes fear, and wasn't necessarily he's fearing his own life. He's fearing the impact of what he's about to do,
Yeah,
of everywhere. The only thing that overcomes fear is training,
yeah.
reps, rehearsals, empowerment. And so that's what was missing.
Are we going to see a change, you think, in training and protocol and things like this going forward after seeing just the weakness of this event? I mean, it's crazy that this hasn't happened yet with all the children who have died in schools.
Mhm.
But is this going to do anything? Is this going to move the needle?
I would think so, because I don't consider myself to be an incredibly smart man. But if I can see it from, the 60,000 foot looking at it in the media level, you'd think, as I know really smart people inside these organizations that, they've diagnosed this as well. And once you diagnose the problem, you can correct it. Because a lot of these things, even with manpower issues,
Mm-hmm.
you can overcome manpower issues with training.
Yeah.
With not just training, but getting those reps in, getting those rehearsals in. So you can take someone. So say 15, 20 years ago, you'd have someone on those outer perimeter that was like 35, 45 years old with, 20 years on the force already. Now you're getting someone maybe 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
same age as a shooter out on the outer perimeter. They don't have those life reps yet, but through rehearsals, through teaching, mentoring, and guiding, then follow up on those rehearsals, you can get someone up to speed quicker if you focus on it. They won't be the same as someone with the wisdom of someone with the education
Mm-hmm.
experience, but they can get closer because you're focusing and letting them know how important the role. Because a lot of times people have no idea how important their role is. They say, I'm just on the outer perimeter. Who cares? No one cares about me. I can't believe I got to come on my day off. Okay, I'm getting paid overtime. Where's my sandwich? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally, when I was in the FBI and told I was got to do security details for the UN General Assembly, for all the tennis matches out there, for the Goodwill games, we worked with Secret Service a lot.
Yeah.
I never had any idea what actually my role and responsibility was than just be present with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
See what I mean? There's no training. There was no reps. There was no rehearsals of just in case you see this, do that. I was told who the team leader was. If you see something, call a team leader. See what I mean? I was not empowered to do anything. If you
Yeah.
see something strange, call a team. I remember one time I was out actually at the tennis matches out in Flushing, New York. The big one. I can't remember what they're called out there.
Yeah.
But we're out there, and as we're walking around, a buddy of mine with all the command posts and protection and everything, someone was walking around, and someone in front of us actually had a laser dot on the back of their head. And we were like, "Oh my god, everyone get down!" I mean, we literally
Yeah.
called everyone get down, and so we found some. It was some moron kid with a
Yeah.
pen.
Yeah.
That was, and we pulled him aside. I said, "Dude, you're gonna get yourself killed
Yeah.
because of." And so, but no one trained us to do that. We just saw it, and why did we see that? Because we just saw about on TV, something had happened where someone was doing these laser dots, and terrorizing people with them. All not because I was trained, but because I saw something on TV.
Sure.
So I think reps, I think rehearsals, and really empowerment with people in these critical types of situations is really key and important.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.